Good morning. Um, Agenda item one this morning is the called order. It's 10 a.m. on June 26th, 2025. And I call this meeting of the Citizens Clean Elections Commission to order. And with that, we will take attendance. Commissioners, please identify yourselves for the record.
Christina Werther.
Galen Payton.
Amy Chan.
And I'm Mark Kimball. We have a quorum. Item two, discussion possible action on the minutes from the May 22nd, 2025 meeting. Commissioners, you have the minutes from our May meeting in your packets. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve them?
I motion to approve the meeting minutes for May 22nd, 2025.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes for the May 25 meeting. I'll call the roll. Commissioner Chan?
Aye.
Commissioner Werther?
Aye.
Commissioner Payton?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. The minutes are approved 4-0. Item three is discussion and possible action on the executive director's report. Tom?
Thank you, commissioners. I wanted to. We can talk about the CD7 primary election in a minute, especially the debate. But I wanted to, before we get to that, highlight the first thing we sort of know, I guess, is that the legislature is moving towards resolving the budget over the next couple of days. There was some action on that yesterday and probably today, Mike. Oh, okay. Now, whether or not that would have affected us directly because of the Voter Protection Act is a little, was not clear, but I think it would have nevertheless been impacted the whole state. So we gather that's on its way to being resolved. In addition to the debates in CD7, we did have a very full month of activities out and about throughout the state. We launched Captain Activate Volume 2 at Fan Fusion this year. Our second appearance, I think, at Fan Fusion, right? And then Avery was a popular author there, so he's gonna have to get his own booth at some point with the other comic book authors. And then Gina, Avery, and I attended the Disability Rights Arizona's African American Conference on Disabilities, and that's been a good event. And then I think this is the first time we may have been in Apache County, probably in certainly a long time. Avery was up at Greer Days, which was, I think, a great invitation and a great place for us to be. And so I thank Avery for making the trek up there, although the weather's better, so I'm not sure. Yeah, and then Commissioner Werther was on a panel at the Election Officials of Arizona conference. We get to take credit for that now. Notwithstanding her practice and her professional, that goes on our list too.
I have 2 more trainings this month. There we go.
And Gina hosted a guided discussion on voter education guides, and which I thought, I sat in on one of those, and I thought that was a very interesting discussion to have, and hearing from different county and city administrators about voter education. I think those are the things that I wanted to highlight. The podcast that we've been recording, I think, has been well received. The Lieutenant Governor episode that was up last week was well. I got emails from texts from people who really liked that. So check that out if you haven't. Real quick on this, just to close out, I think that my aspect of this report, the Center for Arizona Policy versus Arizona Secretary of State, that's the Prop 211 case about whether or not Prop 211 violates the state constitution, particularly the First Amendment analog in the state constitution. And so amicus briefs on that were due this week. So there were about 4 on each side, which I'm happy to share with you if you're interested in. I thought for our purposes, or for my law nerd purposes, John Leshy, who many people may know, is the leading authority on the Arizona Constitution, With some other law professors, weighed in on our side about the original intent of the Arizona Constitution. So I think that's helpful, to say the least. We were going to have, I think, if you could, just to talk about the debates, I thought, Mr. Chairman, if it would be okay if we could have Gina talk about that, just because she's the.
Of course, debates were held in CD7, and I saw quite a bit of coverage of them in the media mentioning clean elections. So, Gina?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Yes, we had the Democratic and Republican debates for the candidates that are running in the special CD7 primary election. Those were held on June 9th and June 10th. And we were very pleased with the results of the debate in terms of the metrics that we were able to follow. So all candidates that were eligible to participate did participate. We actually held the debate down in the district. So we went down to Tucson and we partnered with Arizona Public Media. We had it there at their station at the U of A campus. And in your packet, you'll have a memorandum in there that has both the how to watch documents for each debate. This basically shows every single media partner that picked up the debate, whether it was broadcast or radio or airing it digitally, such as their websites, things like that. So just to highlight briefly, 6 TV stations in Southern Arizona specifically aired each debate live in English, and 1 aired each debate live in Spanish as well. Telemundo aired the debate as well in both Phoenix and Tucson. And for radio stations, we had 6, 4 in Southern Arizona and 2 in Phoenix that aired the debate in both English, and 2 radio stations aired the debate live in Spanish. The reason why I call out the Spanish component of it is because CD7 has a large amount of Spanish-speaking population. So when we do our debates, we offer them in simulcast to any of the media partners in English. We have live Spanish translators on site at the debate. And then we also do an American Sign Language box, and we provide cart captioning. So by providing these different variations of the debate, it makes it much more accessible to voters. So we're really happy to see the Spanish media pick that up and make it available as well for the Spanish-speaking population in CD7. For some comparison purposes, when we had our debates in 2024, in this general area in Southern Arizona, we had Congressional District 6, which is a very contested race between Representative Juan Ciscomani and his opponent, Kirsten Engel. That was a very successful debate in terms of the metrics that we were following. This particular July 15th special election CD7 race, the debate surpassed the metrics for that CD6 debate. So again, just comparison, a lot of folks are interested in this special election, and we were very happy to show that our performance in the debates was exceeding expectations. So as far as being down in the district, we did have quite a bit of local media, including some folks from Phoenix drive down as well, show up, which is fantastic, because the fact that we brought the debate specifically to the district as opposed to having the candidates drive up here, it provided more access to the local media. I think we had approximately 15 members of the media, which also afforded opportunities for both Tom and I to do interviews with those media as well to explain about the clean elections debate process. So from a PR perspective, public relations perspective, when we look at the coverage for it, we see that we had several links to the debate, coverage referencing clean elections, things like that. And so, if we were to put this into dollars amounts, the total advertising value for the debates was approximately $179,000. So it's being effective in terms of the distribution, which goes back to our partnership with the Arizona Media Association, how we are producing these debates, again, making that accessibility of it from captions to Spanish translation, things like that. We are making these debates as accessible as possible to the voters. So that's a highlight. Again, we have the very specific metrics and details in your packet, but with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. And speaking of advertising, I noticed large billboard along I-10 when I was driving from Tucson this morning, mentioning the special election and clean elections somewhere around Casa Grande. Any questions for Gina from members of the commission?
I have a comment.
Commissioner Payton?
So I went to the Republican debate, and I was quite impressed. I thought it was very professionally done. I thought I learned quite a bit about the candidates. I mean, I don't vote in that area, but I learned quite a bit about them. And then I could tell my friends that I know live in those areas what I thought when I saw that. And I think in the past, before we started doing this for the federal things, I think, that it seems like we're just exposing people to really see who these candidates are. It's not just who has the most money to throw the flyers out or whatever they do. And it forces the media to cover all these people. And I noticed that they found some interesting aspects about some of the candidates that I bet they probably wouldn't have investigated that as hard, I don't think. But I mean, it seemed like to me there was about 20 reporters there asking questions, and it kind of seemed like it was like in LA or someplace that has a lot of more influence. But I was really proud of the fact that we put this on, and how Gina and Tom got all that together, and the Reister people that were doing that. I was really impressed about how it went. Not as so impressed that I went the next night, but but it was very good, and I appreciate the fact that we did that, and I think it was good for the state of Arizona, and I hope we continue doing that kind of thing.
Thank you, Commissioner Payton, and we will continue doing it in the general election. We have a debate set up already, I think.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, August 26th is our tentative date. So once we get through the primary, we will extend the official invitations to the eligible candidates that can participate, lock down participation. And the goal is to have it on that date. But of course, if there's scheduling conflicts, we might have to work around that.
In Tucson again?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. We will be going right back down to the same studio.
Thank you. Any other questions for Gina? Thank you, Gina. Tom, are you anything else from your executive director's report?
No, Mr. Chairman, thanks.
Okay, thanks. Any other comments from the commission for Tom or anything else on the report? If not, item 4, discussion and possible action on advisory opinion requested by Fair Democracy regarding application of the definition of campaign media spending to public communications. We have an advisory opinion request to consider the application of the Voters' Right to Know Act to several public communications. Tom has an overview of the draft, and we'll consider public comments if there are any. Tom?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I can see that John and Emma are here. So we have a quick PowerPoint we wanted to use to sort of frame at least the staff part of this. That's our logo. So I wanted to start by saying that, these are sort of our options at this point. We have a deadline in the rule that we drafted around this that doesn't quite work with the way we do our meetings compared to other agencies that have from where we took the rule, but it's working okay. So what that means is that I think the deadline for us to complete this, answer this question is somewhere around July 8th-ish. So options today would be approve the advisory opinion draft. A second option, if you were to get into the course discussion, think, we just can't get this. We will not be able to resolve this. We would put out a written statement that says we can't do that. And then a third would be at least provisionally an additional meeting if we had to reconvene in some more, probably probably an online type public meeting to resolve questions. So just wanted to lay that out there first, if I could, and then we want to get into this a little bit from where we think we think the draft is. I would note, to the best of our knowledge, we didn't get any written public comment about the request or the or the draft we put out. To circulate it on, I think, Monday, which it's fine. I just want to. That's our understanding. If anybody has an alternate understanding, please let us know. So the first thing we want to talk a little bit about is the standard here. This is the the opinion draft principally deals with the application of two provisions of the campaign media definition. One having to do with this promote, supports, attacks, opposes standard, which is, we call that PASO because PASO is harder to say. So, and we put out an opinion related to this last year. And the upshot of that opinion, which I've tried to summarize there, is that, you're trying to walk a line between what qualifies as a mere reference to a candidate, because in another definition, closer to the election, a reference to a clearly identified candidate might bring your communication within the definition of campaign media spending. But we want an action that involves the candidacy. And so the distinction we drew principally in the 2403 advisory opinion was that a communication that focused on a policy view of an election official, but doesn't mention their candidacy, would not be covered. So the mere fact that somebody was a candidate, if you've got a thing that an ad that says call so and so, that is in this under this definition, which runs between 60 days before 6 months before the election and the 90 days prior to the primary. Now that wouldn't qualify under that definition as a campaign media spending. I think we can go to the next one. So this part is a little more elaborate. It's a little more text. So we'll have two slides on this, but this is the definition. Spending monies or, accepting in-kind contributions for communication that supports the election or defeat of candidates of an identified political party or the electoral prospects of an identified political party. And then there's some examples laid out there, which are, such partisan voter registration, get out the vote, that kind of thing. And then there again in 2403, we considered some partisan communications or something that would seem to apply or might apply in this. And we thought that a communication that doesn't involve the electoral prospects of candidates of a particular party or the party itself are not covered. So an advertisement that mentions the party as a means to another end, such as providing context for a call to action to contact the legislature or seeking to bring more people into association with the organization or facilitate direct communication with a particular election official, does not meet that definition. So, again, we're trying to apply the statute by its terms. We're trying to be conscious of the constitutional overlay that goes over all of this, and we're also trying to act consistent with the intent of the act, as the voters put it, which was to, we want the voters want to know essentially who paid for campaign media spending or campaign ads. Now, I will say this, that we also think that the way you do that, sort of philosophically, generally ought to be intuitive and not necessarily counterintuitive, right? So there is a way in which lawyers think where the right answer turns out to be the answer that everybody thought was wrong all along. That's something that one of my closest legal friends calls the clever lawyer test. We think that the voters did not enact a clever lawyer test for campaign media spending. We think they enacted a statute that's pretty clear and that people should be able to apply fairly in a way that will result in folks, voters getting the information that they think they're going to get. So we want to go down, I think, to the next one. Then we've got a little chart. This is basically a breakdown of the ads that we considered, or so we believed that the first one, and we'll look at these in detail, but we basically concluded that examples 3 and 5 were attacks essentially, and that 1 and 4 did not fall within that, and then the 2 we took 2 to be about the party communication activity standard. Again, that's how we saw it. If other people think there are other statutes we should have answered, we have a footnote sort of getting at when you're doing list development kind of stuff in there, but we're not spending a lot of time in this presentation about that. And that's sort of where we are. The other thing I want to say by way of background before we look at the ads themselves again is, we have a case in Arizona with respect to disclosure, with respect to what express advocacy means. And so I'm being a little jargony here, but but we have a standard for what constitutes express advocacy that's been announced by our Court of Appeals. And so, we think that case, which is good law, and we think binding on the commission as a staff, or as I do anyways, is something we have to bear in mind when we're thinking about this. And so that's why when you look at the draft itself, there's a footnote that says if we determine something is in fact going to hit the PASO standard, then we're not going to have to evaluate it for that express advocacy standard. But I think that express advocacy standard, as applied in Committee for Justice and Fairness v. Secretary of State, is an important thing for folks to understand if you're actually in the business of reviewing these things for compliance purposes. So I guess we can go to the ads themselves. Let's see here. So this was communication 1, and this is actually in the opinion, or in the request itself. We didn't reproduce the ads in the opinion, although I think what we'll end up doing when distributed is attaching the letter request to the opinion that goes out so that folks can cross-reference it. This one you've got, this one we think falls within that 2403, referring to a representative who may be a candidate, but it's really not focused on their candidacy. It's focused on their role and the role of the party in opposition to a particular policy measure. So we thought that this falls within the way we applied this in the earlier draft. So 2A, 2B, and 2C have to do with party, right? So it's expressly calling out a particular party and talking about what they want to do. There is, again, a direct reference to a particular policy issue that's ongoing. And so we thought that, again, that this falls within what we had said about how to deal with partisan communications in the context of that standard. We're trying to figure out a good analogy here. We haven't quite got it, except it's something like, and it's only something like, I think, the difference between a got milk advertisement and and buy milk at Safeway advertisement. In other words, feel good about your party because they're doing this thing that we like, versus versus come buy the party's product. It's not quite perfect, but something like that, just for practical purposes, right? So if you're just doing an advertisement to say, have good feelings about me, that's not necessarily going to be electoral per se, at least under these circumstances. So then we get into 3A and 3B, which I think are probably going to be maybe the most difficult in a sense. And because the distinction there is you've got at least as we understand it, you've got a candidate, not as we understand it, or we don't have any facts, I don't think, that say that this person's in office now. We have a one ad says, where do your candidates stand on education funding? And this is candidate John Doe supports spending tax dollars on private schools and ski passes. And then the text is John Doe, candidate for LD 31, supports Arizona's universal school voucher program, which costs the state X number of dollars. Doe opposes efforts to add oversight or prevent misuse of funds and describes himself as an outspoken school choice advocate. The next ad is essentially the same text, except instead of saying, you know where candidates stand and here's candidate, it just says John Doe, right? And then essentially the same facts other than that. So first, so that gets back to this issue of we tried to capture in the first slide around the action on the candidacy. I think if I read the sort of the letter from the request letter correctly, I think the focus there is on the word candidate, maybe, and I'm probably oversimplifying. So I will, John and Emma can obviously flesh that out from their perspective. But from our perspective, it sort of comes down to we didn't think that the word candidate alone is enough, in part because you're taking a particular first of all, person. There's no public policy this person is engaged upon in terms of their actual activities. And indeed, you're not like some of the other ads that we said were not campaign media spending in our 2403. You're not saying call anybody and talk about anything, or there's not a call to action along those lines. And then it's sort of taking a thing that exists is in fact, right, that people can spend and have apparently spent money, these monies on private schools and ski passes. And then you're leading with that, as a thing that is negative. So, we felt comfortable that this represented an attack when you take those things together. I think to some extent, maybe. That the language in 2403 that talked about action on a candidacy, I think if you read that in context, it's juxtaposing that against a reference to a candidate. We didn't see this as a reference to a candidate. This is an action on the candidate. So there's a sentence in 2403 that maybe I'm wrong about that, but if it was ambiguous, if I'm right, that's a thing that I think that if you really read that sentence, it's juxtaposing reference to action, and the action here is the attack. And I think that if you look at, I do think that CJEF, the Committee for Justice and Fairness case, is relevant here because of if you look at how that sets up what constitutes an attack, for lack of a better way of putting it, in that context. So that's what that is. 4, you got a state rep, Backlash, introduced a bill that has their that they claim there's a conflict of interest on. That's a again, we fought that in contrast to 3A and B, falls into the category of I try not to use this word, but issue advocacy. And then finally, we get to publication 5, or public communication 5. New report shows that Rep. Jacobs failed to file his taxes on time. We are assuming, I guess, and if we're wrong about this for the assumption, obviously we need to clarify that. But we're assuming Rep. Jacobs is running for office. We're assuming people would know that, and we're assuming that that new report shows that Rep. Jacobs failed to file his taxes on time. I don't want to overcomplicate this. If you saw an ad that said, Councilman Jones doesn't pay his parking tickets, and the tagline was, shouldn't everyone pay their parking tickets? I just think that a reasonable person, certainly a person who enacted this, and would believe that was intact. I think this one's pretty straightforward in that way. So that's kind of where we ended up in evaluating this. I think that's pretty much it. I think that's it. Is that it? I think that's it. Yeah. So if y'all have questions for me, I'm happy to answer them. And then, John and Emma submitted this on behalf of Fair Democracy. And so I'm sure maybe they have insight that they can share. So.
Okay, thank you, Tom. We'll get to the representatives of Fair Democracy in just a second. Do any members of the commission have any comments or questions of Tom? Hearing none. We have Jonathan Birkin and Emily Anspach, the Council for Fair Democracy, with us today. Do either or both of you have comments about Tom's conclusions?
I think thanks to the commission and for Mr. Collins for your thoughtful assessment of this. Our goal in seeking this is to try to get clarity for our client on where the lines are with a standard that, understandably on its face doesn't always provide that clarity. So, I think we view this draft opinion as providing distinctions that we can understand between and among these ads, which is sort of what we're seeking in asking for this opinion. So beyond that, unless you have anything else, Emma, I don't think we have any additional comments, but are here to answer any questions that the commission may have.
Thank you, Mr. Birkin. Ms. Anspach, do you have any other comments to make?
No, I don't have anything else to add. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do any members of the commission have any questions for the representatives of Fair Democracy? So, commissioners, what is your preference? We can approve the advisory opinion. We can say that we were unable to reach a conclusion, whether we agree with Tom's conclusions or not. We can schedule another meeting before July 8th. Any preference for members of the commission?
Mr. Chair, I'm comfortable
Whither.
approving today, seeing as I reviewed this as well, that Tom provided the analysis, and I think the fact that the requester, I think, also would accept it. I'm more inclined to just go ahead and approve it and provide that clarity that they're seeking sooner rather than later.
So just to be clear, you're making a motion to approve the advisory opinion.
I didn't know if anybody else wanted to weigh in before I made a
sorry,
motion.
didn't mean to misstate your position.
Make a comment.
Commissioner Payton?
I would just say that as being a non-lawyer, it makes sense. And I think we have to have lines so that everybody knows what the game rules are. And so it makes it easier because we're going to have to be the umpire down the road or whatever. And I think these make things fairly simple to figure out. And so I would be happy with these as well.
Thank you. So do we have a motion how we want to proceed on this?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the advisory opinion requested by Fair Democracy as provided and discussed today by the executive director.
Thank you, Commissioner Werther. Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the advisory opinion. I will call the roll. Commissioner Werther?
Aye.
Commissioner Payton?
Aye.
Commissioner Chan?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. The advisory opinion is approved 4-0. Thank you both for coming today, and we appreciate your feedback.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Item 5, discussion possible action on the 5-year review report for submission to the Governor's Regulatory Review Council. Somehow another 5 years have gone by, and we have a report due to the Governor's Regulatory Review Council regarding our rules under the Clean Elections Act. Tom, is there anything to add here?
I think the only as I mentioned in my memo, I think the main thing I want to clear is we may have some changes we have to make to finalize it, and there may be some feedback from GERC when you submit. Typically, they give you some editorial feedback on stuff that you missed or things. So, you know, we do, you know, we do want authority to finalize what we do, so that, you know, so if it doesn't turn out to be verbatim what we've got in front of you, that we have some flexibility there. Obviously, if there's something serious, we'll bring that back to you. But that was one thing I wanted to make clear. The other thing is, you know, we have, for the purposes of this draft, we have interpreted written negative communication or something, written criticism broadly, just to be on the safe side. And what that means is that, you know, we have some litigation that's not necessarily criticism of the rule, but actually an effort to, you know, to say a rule is invalid. And we have had some criticism of the application of the rule, really, rather than necessarily the rule itself. And so those are there. And I highlight that in part because I think that what GERC is looking for is written criticism that you received in the course of doing the rulemaking, or a letter that said, "Hey, you should tweak this." But but nevertheless, you know, to be on the safe side, we wanted to include those things. So I think that's the only. Oh, and the last thing, sorry, this doesn't include Article 8 of our rules, which is the VRCA rules, because those are not subject to GERC review.
So just to be clear, you're asking us to approve the response that you have provided to us to the Governor's Regulatory Review Council.
Yes, correct.
Okay. Do we have a motion to that effect?
Mr. Chair, I move to finalize and submit the Commission's 5-year rule review report.
Thank you, Commissioner Werther. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Payton. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the report to the Governor's Regulatory Review Council. I'll call the roll. Commissioner Chan?
Aye.
Commissioner Werther?
Aye.
Commissioner Payton?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. The motion's approved 4-0. Item 6, public comment. This is the time for consideration of comments and suggestions from the public. Action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter or rescheduling the matter for further consideration and decision at a later date, or responding to criticism. If anyone has any comments, please limit your comment to no more than 2 minutes. Is there any member of the public wishing to make a comment at this time? No one in the room. Anyone on Zoom? Appears not. Public may also send comments to the commission by email at ccec@azcleanelections.gov. At this time, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn. I'll call the roll. Commissioner Chan?
Aye.
Commissioner Werther?
Aye.
Commissioner Payton?